Hello and welcome to another episode of the Doster, T.O. and Fanta podcast. That is the DTF Podcast. It is Wednesday morning, July 27th. Peach Jam is over. The July live recruiting periods are over. My trip to Seattle is over, and I'm joined today by two of my favorite people on the planet to kind of recap some things that have happened over the course of the last month. It's been a while since we talked, fellas. T.O., I saw you down in South Carolina. Fanta, we have not jumped on this podcast in what, like a month?
Yep. And over the last month, every Duke fan has been in my mentions and in my direct messages since we last potted. We could not have had a larger gap between podcasts, and it couldn't have been worse for me. I got a message from a Duke fan who said, John Lanta, as in taking the L, Duke is your daddy. So that's what's happened to me in the last month. I've become Fanta's no more. I took the L. I'm Lanta to Duke fans now.
John Lanta. You got to love it. And the funny part about that was Jon Scheyer, who I saw at the Peach Jam. And I told you guys this off air, but the people need to hear it. Like they said, John goes, or he was like, man, Fanta just crushing Jeremy Roach. He's just crushing him. I don't get it. I was like, I don't either, John. I don't either. I don't know what Fanta was saying. And I completely pushed you under the bus for what it's worth. I was like, I think Jeremy Roach is great. But you didn't say he was bad, though, John. You didn't say he was bad.
Don't let the facts get in the way of a good story. I never said that. We'll go right off the top here, and I will clarify without going on too long of a soapbox to then feed it back to Bobby D. The point is simple. Duke needs Jeremy Roach to be great this season. They need him to be a leader. They need him to be that dog. Jeremy Roach is a terrific competitor, and he's got a dog mentality. I like the way he plays defense, and I thought in big moments for Duke in the NCAA tournament, he was terrific. They don't make as big of a run as they did without him. That being said, you can both say that Jeremy Roach was sensational in the NCAA tournament and is huge for Duke this upcoming season, while acknowledging the fact that there are still areas of his game in which he can get better and some questions for him still to answer as he takes on an even bigger role for a team that's not loaded with the quality of professional necessarily heading into this season. Paolo Banchero is not walking through the door. Duke's got some of the best prospects that this recruiting class has to offer. Paolo Banchero and these guys, they're not on the same wavelength. That was my point, and I want to see how Roach handles it this season. That's my point, Duke fans. I still think he's got certain things that he can figure out, and we'll see if he does.
Well, what I will say about this Duke team, and like looking ahead to this Duke team, the pieces fit a little bit better this year. Now, they don't have a Paolo Banchero this year, but they got Derek Lively, who's a lob threat / three-point shooter. They got Filipowski that can operate out on the perimeter. Dariq Whitehead has done a lot of different things during his time at Mount Verde. And then Jeremy Roach is going to be the guy that kind of makes it all happen for them. And then they've added some vets. I like this Duke team. I like the way they're moving forward. It's just you're right. You're right to a point because there is no number one pick on this team. However, there's still, I mean, what would Duke have 5 draft picks this year? It's ridiculous. Basically, their whole starting 5 draft picks. Will they have that next year? Maybe not, but they could just have 3 or 4 draft picks. So, you know, we're splitting hairs here. They're still going to be really talented. But like you said, Fanta, I'm not going against what you're saying, but I think the pieces around Jeremy Roach, this was my argument then, it's my argument now. The pieces around him fit him much better because now he can use what he's good at. And that's his quickness, that's his ball screen offense and all those things.
For the people listening at home, I just want to let you guys know what it's like being on this podcast. See, I have this whole rundown.
This wasn't even listed, was it?
That I sent to these two guys, right? This whole rundown, right? There's probably a good 200 words here, a whole bunch of notes, 4 different topics. None of them have anything to do with Jeremy Roach. We have one segment at the end. We are going to talk about Jon Scheyer versus Kyle Neptune and how that fits. We have a lot to talk about when it comes to Peach Jam, when it comes to Gigi Jackson, when it comes to Justin Edwards. We're going to get into all of that. But the very first thing that we were supposed to talk about was Bill Self. But no, that's not what happens on this podcast. Vanta just goes wherever he wants to go. That's the story of the field of 68.
It's been bothering me for a freaking month. I've been sitting on that for a month.
I have a question, and this is a real question. What fan base do you think is angrier? The Duke fans at Fanta or the Iowa fans and the Keegan Murray stands at TO?
Iowa fans. There's no question about it, because I was very clear in my responses to Duke fans that I never called them a bad player or whatnot. TO not only questioned Keegan Murray, but then he made some insults on this podcast at the people of Iowa, which as an Ohioan, I took offense to it because
don't do that. Don't
roots.
Do that. You're not the same. You can't just claim the whole Midwest, Fanta.
Yeah, I'm claiming the entire Midwest. The Iowa people do not like you. You are banned from that state effective immediately.
That's fine. There's not
my
shit
favorite
there
part
anyway.
about that.
That is just cruel.
They
have good favorite college basketball.
The only thing good there is NIL at Iowa State. We'll get into that later too.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll get into that. My favorite part about that entire back and forth, TO, is how many times Iowa fans have called you out for changing Keegan Murray's weight during that argument.
I did do that.
I think you said on the show he was 205, and then you tweeted out that he was 220. And they're like, what happened? Where did those 15 pounds come from? Do you know what you're talking about? This is proof that you're an idiot.
That did happen. I did do that. What is he? 225? I mean, he's a big dude. And here's the thing, like, I didn't say he was a terrible athlete. I said he wasn't good compared to the other four.
Here we go.
No. You can't walk that one back.
Look. Here's the truth.
I was comparing him to the other four. When I said underwhelming athlete,
here's the truth. I'm going to go find the audio. I'll tweet it out. Make sure that you guys all see it. T.O. said that Keegan Murray sucked and that he's a bum. And John Fanta said that Jeremy Roach is going to be the worst point guard in Duke history. Yeah. Those are direct quotes. That is exactly.
And now that we got that out of the way.
Right. Hey, Greg Waddell's backcourt rankings, they don't have Duke's backcourt in the top 10. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and if you want to get into what fans that are really mad at us, Kentucky fans are not happy that we ranked Creighton's front court in front of Oscar Tshiebwe and whoever's going to be at the 4 for Kentucky.
That's problem. You don't know the other guy.
That in our top 25 players of the last decade, we had Grayson Allen ranked above Oscar Tshiebwe, and they are very, very upset about that because apparently Oscar Tshiebwe is actually the second coming of Hakeem Olajuwon. No one told me that though. Anyway, listen, make sure that you like. Make sure that you subscribe, whether or not you listen to this podcast on audio, on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. If you watch it on YouTube, make sure that you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. All of those interactions really do help us within those algorithms, and those algorithms are what pays the bills for us. Leave a comment, leave a review. Make sure you let us know how much Fanta does not know about Duke's starting backcourt. I already teased what we're going to get into. The biggest story of the last week, however, was probably the report that came out from Matt Norlander at CBS Sports that Bill Self and Curtis Townsend had been held off the road for June and July. It wasn't just June and July. They were not on the road out in April either. They have not been in any of the most recent live recruiting periods. I don't know if this was written in Norlander's story, but this was something that was recommended by the NCAA. This wasn't a decision by Kansas. It was kind of the NCAA saying, hey, you know what? You probably don't want to put those guys on the road because that's probably going to be end up something that gets taken away when we get to this kind of whole IAR. Is that what it is? The IARP hearings?
Yes, that's correct.
Assistant coaches Jeremy Case and Norm Roberts were both out on the road. I think we saw both of them in South Carolina, Tio. I don't know if you saw them in.
I did. I saw both of them there.
I don't know if you saw them at Peach Jam. And just to kind of remind you guys where we are in this whole process, Kansas got their notice of allegations 3 years ago. It was September of 2019. Right. In May of 2020, a month into lockdowns, when we were all still stuck in our houses, not able to go out anywhere. That's how long ago it was. Kansas put out that statement where they called the allegations in that notice, quote, baseless and littered with false representation. So, Fanta, I know you have a take on this. How do you feel about Self being held out on the road, Curtis Townsend being held off from going on the road recruiting? And does this matter at all? Is it going to have any impact on anything when it comes to Kansas basketball?
Well, I don't think that it has a major impact in terms of Kansas's ability to recruit. We don't know whether or not Bill Self and Townsend are able to text these players or if they're still in communication. Watching a game in person is not everything. So here's the deal. I don't think that this is a huge deal other than the fact that it is the first cooperative shift that Kansas is having when it comes to this investigation. It's the first time that we are seeing a blink in what has been a stare down between the NCAA and Kansas. Kansas calling the NCAA's claims, you said a couple of quotes, how about, quote, a false narrative because of the fact that an Adidas consultant aided in the payment of two parents of their players. They claim that they had nothing to do with that, nor did they have knowledge. We could talk about who's at fault or whatnot. The fact of the matter is this, okay? I don't think that this damages Kansas. I don't think it has a huge effect. It could signal that they're trying to ease the blow of what will be a potentially long overdue punishment, whatever it is. The point goes back to the fact that the NCAA has stated that they're going to change the way that they do infractions and change the way that they hand down punishments. Rob, the fact that you're asking, is it the IARP? Yeah, the Independent Accountability Resolution Process that was formed, by the way, off of this FBI investigation, which, even though they got their notice of allegations in September 2019, when was the FBI investigation conducted and processed? That was all the way back in 2017. The point is, it's July of 2022, and the NCAA and their whole, quote, process only affects people that end up having very little to nothing to do with what actually happened. The irony is Kansas has already suffered a little bit in recruiting in the past because this was hovering over them. But did they suffer? No, they didn't. They might have suffered. They might have suffered in the recruiting pathway, but they ended up getting kids that helped them win a national championship, which kind of sums up the current college basketball culture that five-star talent, you're going to go after it, but that's not the sole ingredient to winning national titles.
Yeah, here's the thing. They just won a title, right? Based off.
I'm taking all the charges. I got my trophy. I'm taking all the charges right now just to get this shit out of the way.
Yeah, but listen, they just won their title. They just won their title with 3-star local kids carrying the load. Oshaya Baji, Christian Brown, DeJuan Harris. All local kids, all 3-star prospects, none of whom anybody saw them going to Kansas and saying, oh, yeah, those guys are going to be NBA players and are going to win national championships. I talked with Bill Self last week. This is a quote from him. We make our living off of the Marcus Morrises, the top 75 kids that are better than one and dones when they are juniors and seniors, right? That's where they've been at their best. Those are the guys that have won Kansas national titles. They've had 9 guys that have been one and dones, right? How many of those guys have been great? How many of them have led Kansas to Final Fours and to national titles and to the league championships, right? The year that Frank Mason won National Player of the Year, Josh Jackson was a top 5 pick.
Yeah.
Right? That's what Kansas is at their best, developing guys and turning guys into pros 2, 3, 4 years in the program. And you know what else? They have 3 top 30 prospects coming into school this year. Grady Dick, by the way, hilarious name. MJ Rice and Ernest Uday. I think I got that right. Ernest Uday. They have 3 top 30 prospects coming in. It's not like their recruiting is hurting, and it's not even that important for Bill Self to get these guys. And oh, by the way, we're 5 years removed from all of this happening, and we have no idea, 1, when Kansas is going to have the IARP hearing, and 2, when we're actually going to hear punishments. There have been rumblings. I don't know if you heard this, Tio, when you're on the road. I've heard some people say that they think that there's going to be a postseason suspension and Bill Self is going to miss regular season games this year. And we might even get a postseason ban at some point from Kansas. I've also heard people say they think that UMKC should be on the lookout for some hefty NCAA punishments coming based off of what happened with Kansas. So who knows what actually is going to end up happening here.
UMKC. Okay. So I'm lost there, but no, to go.
That's the whole, did you get that joke? Did you get that
Yes,
reference?
I did. I got it.
The NCAA is so mad at Jerry Tarkanian that they gave Cleveland State another postseason ban.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, there you go.
No, I didn't.
Well,
sorry, I'm
somebody might need to
keep up, To. Please. We have
somebody might need to show the NCAA where Kansas is so that they don't get them mixed up with Kansas City.
Yeah, no kidding. It's kind of like when Charleston Southern, some of their guys were selling back bucks, and it's just like, oh, let's really go after those guys. It's ridiculous. No, I will say having Bill and having his lead assistant not being there is not great, but Jeremy Case and Norm, I mean, he's had those guys for a long time. So like that's where continuity of having a staff, the same staff for a long time helps. And you guys were speaking to the effects of not having them on the road. Not really that much, guys. Not really that much. They're still going to get their hands on guys. They're still going to get their hands on really good players. And when you've had that type of continuity for so long, Norm's been there for 12 seasons. Jeremy Case has been there. He's been there since 2016 as a video coordinator. Like those guys, they have continuity within their staff, and it doesn't really. Once you trust those guys, like it's not really going to affect those things as much. And you try to tell me a kid and his parents are going to come in and meet Bill Self, and he's not just going to sweep them off their feet. Like none of that stuff really bothers me at all. And they're going to have their pick of kids in the Midwest. That's just the bottom line.
I'll just play devil's advocate for a moment here because I agree with you. Mm-hmm. And when I said that Kansas, quote, already has suffered, what I meant is what you said, Rob. They were getting some 3-star prospects. They might have had to swallow lumps, if you'd like to say that, when this investigation first came down, just from an optic standpoint. But they didn't, because they're the national champions in the sport. My question as a devil's advocate is, okay, none of us think it really matters a whole lot. So then why do you even do it to begin with? Why do it? Why take them off the road?
Just to get ahead of it. And being like, hey, we're going to cooperate. Maybe, you guys take it easy on it. But that being said, Oklahoma State cooperated with everything, and then they just got hit with a hammer. So, like, I'm not sure why anybody would cooperate with anything the NCAA is saying with that stuff.
Well, I think the NCAA realized that their punishment for Oklahoma State was wrong, because if you go back and look at some of the stuff that the other schools have gotten since then, it's been much less severe. And I think they realized, hey, you know what? We might have fucked this one up.
Well, you might be giving too much credit. You might be giving too much credit to the NCAA too. I mean, let's face it. How could you not realize that ahead of giving out the punishment? That's why cooperating at all, this inclines to me Kansas has intel that something's coming, and they're trying to ease the blow of it.
Yes. It's not necessarily easing the blow. It's the kind of thing where it's like,
just get out in front of it, and then maybe this summer will count against that whole thing.
It was recommended to them that this is something that they should do. And
is it kind of like when you have a really bad day at school growing up, and then you locked yourself in your room before Dad got home, fully knowing that he's coming into your room?
It's like when your wife comes home and she says, hey, you know what, you smell, you should probably go take a shower, right? It's that kind of a thing. Everybody knows, like, you probably need to take a shower. You maybe been putting it off a little bit, and she comes home and is like, you need to go get your ass in the shower. You stink right now. That's the kind of thing that we're talking about right here. Anyway,
yeah, but when she's showering with you,
oh boy, But look, true story. Co-showering like that, 1,000% overrated. 1,000%.
Kid show.
1,000%.
This is a talk around a couple of beers type of deal.
Yeah,
I'm not talking about that subject.
1,000%. I'll talk
my
about
feelings
1,000% overrated.
Yeah. Okay. Next topic.
All right. Listen, before we get into it, we're going to talk about the Peach Jam recap here. So I want to make sure to remind you guys, subscribe to our Instagram, subscribe to our TikTok pages. Those links will be down below. We have a major announcement coming in the next couple of weeks. I don't know exactly when it's going to end up being, but it's something that will be good and informative, and I'm pretty excited about. It's a project that we've been working quite a bit on during this summer. So, Peach Jam recap, T.O., you were down there. You were in North Augusta, South Carolina, which is one of the most oddly named cities in America. But I missed Peach Jam this year. It was the first time in probably a decade that I haven't been at a Peach Jam. Who impressed you?
One guy in particular that impressed me a lot was Drive Nation's Justin McBride. This was a guy who was 6'8", 6'9", could handle it. And I was wondering, like, what is he the first time I saw him? And he was a guy who was making the right read, making nice passes, hit a lot of mid-range jump shots, and he ended up with 21 and 11. I go back, I watch him again, and him and his teammate, Liam McNeely, who's also a stud. He's a 2024 kid who's got offers from everywhere, 6'6" or whatever. He goes in, and I'm like, well, he's just kind of a guy. He's a ball mover. Well, next game, he goes for 33. And it was like, man, this kid's really, really impressive. And he doesn't necessarily, he looks the part as far as his height is concerned, but he's not one of these broad-shouldered Adonis bodies like a Mackenzie Mbako for New Jersey Scholars, who could be in the running for best player in the country. But he is so talented. He's making skip passes from one wing to the opposite corner with his offhand, off the dribble at that size. And he just knows how to play the game. He was one guy. Another one, and I've been a fan for a while, Elliot Cadeau, half Swedish, half American kid. I feel like I have to say that because every time he plays well, I get about 10 text messages from my Swedish friends. He might have been the best pure point guard in not only this camp, but all summer. He was special. Change of pace, played against CP3, almost had a triple-double, and he had the ability to put his foot on the gas. He's got elite quickness, and he had the ability to slow it down a little bit. He's from Bergen Catholic, I believe. I think that's in New Jersey, correct?
You bet it is.
He is really, really talented, about 6'6", but some of the passes, guys, that he put on a dime were really incredible. Overall, the Peach Jam was awesome. Now, is the talent in 23 and 24 as high as what it was last year, the year before? Probably not. But Nike, at least in this year's, it was far and away better from top to bottom in terms of teams. Even the worst teams are competing at least at the mid levels of Adidas, and probably a little bit higher at Under Armour. But like it always is, guys, a great tournament, a great weekend, and high level talent all around.
Are you surprised, Fanta, that T.O. Came on here and hyped up the Swedish guy?
He's the best point guard in the country. He's the best point guard in the country. That's important.
Or the world.
Might be the best point guard in the world.
Yeah. It's probably
for 17 under. Yeah, it might be.
So here's my take on the current state of affairs in the recruiting world is that when you look at the 2023 rankings from 24/7 Sports, the composite rankings that take everything into account, there are two programs to account for 7 of the 12 commitments thus far from the 5-star prospects. There are a total of 21 players that are given the 5-star label by 24/7 Sports in the 2023 class, which is not some exceptional class, but needless to say, there are 21 5-star prospects. Duke and Kentucky have compiled 7 of the 12 commitments from 5-star prospects. No other program has more than 1 commitment. The point, whether it's before NIL or after NIL or in our current era of college basketball that's ever changing, Kentucky and Duke have only gotten richer. And John Calipari is a dangerous, dangerous man on the recruiting pathway right now.
How much does it matter? No, seriously, how much does it matter? Look at the teams that have won the recent national titles, right? Baylor in 2021 did it with a bunch of older guys. Mm-hmm. Kansas in 2022 did it with a bunch of older guys. In 2020, Kansas was the overwhelming favorite. They had a senior at center in Udoka Azubuike, who could have ended up being the national player of the year that season. In 2019, it was Virginia, bunch of older guys. 2018, it was Villanova, bunch of older guys. 2017, North Carolina, bunch of older guys. 2016, again, Villanova, bunch of older guys. You have to go all the way back to 2015 to find a roster that had majority freshmen in the starting lineup, right, for Duke in 2015. Before that, it was Kentucky in 2012. And that was when you had guys like Jahlil Okafor and Tyus Jones and Anthony Davis and Michael Kidd-Gilchrist who were enrolling. No one in the 2023 class is going to be anywhere near as good as those guys. No one in the 2022 class, I believe, is going to be anywhere near as good as those guys. So how much does it matter, T.O.?
I think with the transfer portal and over the next 2 years, it's not going to matter as much. And I love your point about Bill Self saying the top 75 guys that stay for 2 or 3 years. That's what it comes down to right now. That's what college basketball is. And then you can pepper it in with a fifth-year COVID senior that'll come in and get his master's degree and sets the culture. Like that's what Calipari did whenever he had his championship teams. He had really good talent that was young, but then he also had some vets that kind of kept everybody in line. That's how much it matters, as long as you have pieces around them. We said it at the beginning of last season. Talent wins big time stuff, but it's the veteran teams that'll kind of keep you on track for a while. You got to have those pieces, at least to set yourself up for a favorable tournament run. I think that's the biggest thing. Once your young guys learn how to play, those are the guys that are going to change the game for you, except when you look at like a Kansas, for example. But to go along with what you're saying, Rob, that top 75, the outside the top 15, that's where you're going to make your money if you're a college coach.
Sure. And this goes back to the high variance degree in the month of March. But what there's no variance degree in is the fact that you look at the track record of past national champions, the rundown that you just gave, and that is at the forefront of our minds of the division of what makes you successful in terms of if you're in the national championship conversation, what separates you from everybody else versus, well, are you really going to shy away from the best talent in a high school class? You're not going to, in the cases of Jon Scheyer, John Calipari, and in the cases of a TJ Otzelberger, who just locked up the highest ranked commit in the history of Iowa State basketball since recruiting services were ranking players, that dates back to 1999. You're not going to shy away. You're not going to shy away from being able to have access to that talent. I think it matters. But is it the most important detail when it comes to being on top of the sport? In 2022, the answer to that question is no, but I don't think that you're going to suddenly not take in that talent, because if I have the opportunity to get the next Paolo Banchero or to get access to Zion Williamson, Duke and Kentucky are going to be at the front of the line. I'm not going to be able to get into that deli line. So I think it's a mixed blend. I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but no longer is it the foregone conclusion to what success is in college basketball.
Well, we also need to determine what success is, because Duke made it with all those young players to the Final Four. So we need, if it's national championship or bust, I'm not sure how much it really matters. If it's making it too deep into the tournament, second weekend, Final Four, it does matter, because people have proven consistently that you're at least getting to the second round or to the second weekend. I think that's a big thing. So what we determine as success, if you're going for national championships, you need older guys. You want to get to the second weekend, which is completely plausible for all these five-star kids going in and winning 2 games and then moving on to the next weekend. If that's your version of success, then it completely matters. But it's just a matter of what you determine that to be. And with Duke and Kentucky, you want to win national championships. So
unfortunately,
it's
unfortunately for Kentucky's case, and it stinks because 2020, we don't know what would have happened for anybody. But for the fans in Lexington, 2019 feels like a long time ago. My point being, look, it's been a while. It's been as long as ever to Kentucky fans that they've made a March run.
Mm-hmm. And there's something to be said about whether or not there is now some pressure on John Calipari to start winning, right? There was a while where it felt like he was making Final Fours every single year, but I think that other teams have kind of caught up to this idea of stacking your roster with talent. And that's my biggest thing, right? I think that I don't like the way necessarily that recruiting services will have 28, 29, 30 5-star guys in a class, right? The difference between 5-star Paolo Banchero and then 5-star number 28 player in any given class is so massive that they should not have that same ranking. Because what happens is you look at that 5-star number and you just kind of assume, okay, yeah, this guy's got a chance to be a potential lottery pick. No, it's not. There are guys that are freshmen that can come in and dominate the sport, right? And there are also 5-stars that have a chance in 2 years, 3 years to maybe one day be an NBA player. And I do think that that is a distinction that that people need to understand. Like, not all 5-stars are made the same. And if you're going to put Zion Williamson and RJ Barrett and Trey Jones and Cam Reddish, all of whom were top 10 prospects on the floor at one time, that's a very different thing than bringing in like the number 7 player, the number 12 player, the number 19 player, and the number 25 player, and expecting all of those guys to immediately be stars in college. That's not the way that it's going to end up working. And I think that we're going to see that with some of these upcoming classes that Duke and Kentucky are putting together. Yes, they're the best recruiting classes in the country. No, they are not going to have the same kind of impact that putting Anthony Davis and Michael Kidd-Gilchrist together with guys like Darius Miller and Deron Lamb who have been there, or having 4 top 10 players like Duke did in the 2014 class when they won the national title. That's very different than what we're seeing from some of these classes right now. Part of it is because a lot of these guys are bouncing to the G League Ignite or sticking with Overtime Elite, and we're not even seeing them in college.
That's right.
So, and you know what? Frankly, the 2023 and 2024 classes, I don't think are good enough to even have this conversation where saying you can get the top 5 players and bring them in and have a chance to get to a Final Four. Let me ask you that. That's a good segue. Let me ask you that, Tio.
First of all, can I throw something in there now that we're talking about Kentucky?
No.
Who has had a more recent national championship, UConn or Kentucky?
Who did UConn beat when they won that championship in the Final Four?
That's right. I'm just.
Do you know?
I didn't think it would be that far back, but gosh, it has been a while.
Do you know who did Kentucky beat in that Final Four? Fanta. Were you old enough then?
Oh yeah, no, but
I was 12.
I think you might have been in high school. You don't know who they beat in that Final Four? They beat Kentucky. They beat the Brandon Miller team.
No.
You said they beat
Kentucky beat.
They beat them in the finals.
Yeah. UConn beat Kentucky in the finals. Yeah, no, I know that.
UConn beat Kentucky in the Final Four.
Who Kentucky beat in the Final Four.
That's what I thought too.
Butler in the finals. Yeah, they beat Butler in the ugliest game in the history of college basketball.
They beat Butler once, and then they beat Kentucky in another.
UConn beat Kentucky in the finals.
Yeah, they beat Butler another year.
Oh, that's right. In 2014, they beat Kentucky in the finals. In 2011, they beat Kentucky in the Final Four. Is that what it was?
That's right.
I can't remember. No, they beat Florida. I don't.
Get him, Fanta. Get him. Don't let him get away with anything, Fanta. Don't let him get away with anything.
You're right.
But you know what?
It was 2011, they beat the Brandon Miller team in the Final Four. Right? I don't know. Go ahead. They just all they do is beat Kentucky. That's all they do.
Right. So here's the thing. A takeaway on everything that we've witnessed with recruiting. And T.O., you were in the building. I was able to watch some of Peach Jam. Stream was interesting. That being said, when you think about the recruiting cycle and when you think about reactions, because that's what this all is, it's very reactionary, not to a fault. There are analysts for this stuff, but it's just the way of the world. How does TJ Power, who is ranked, from what I understand, around 60, 65.
He's jumping. He's jumping up.
By the end of Peach Jam, he's a top 25 prospect. I mean, my point is, you're jumping 45 spots. And don't get me wrong, I think TJ Power built his stock as well as anybody here over this last month. That being said, we live in this world, Rob, where you said it. We put stars next to somebody's name, yet you can't both say, like, I guess you can, but okay, TJ Power jumps 45 spots in your recruiting rankings. Now there's some people that are in the same chair who are like, not only is DJ Wagner not the best prospect in the class, I'm not sure if he's a top 10 prospect. I don't know about him. We live in this world of takes, and I just want to remind everybody, we're talking about kids. We're talking about 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old kids. Like that culture, that landscape needs to get reinforced here, because do I really know if Cooper Flagg and Cameron Boozer are going to be the next great players?
Well, yeah.
How the hell
be
do you
NBA
really
players.
know that about a 15-year-old?
No, there's
The
I think
rankings
that you
are also
can.
reactionary as all hell because like TJ
well, they
Power.
are. Because people it changes, right? You have a different set of information, right? You get these rankings that come out before all of the live periods start, generally speaking, at some point in April, right? Then you have a value that's after high school basketball seasons. Then you have an evaluation period in April. They have 2 months to work on the game. You have an evaluation period in June. You have 3-4 weeks to work on your game. Then you have an evaluation period in July. Kids get better. When 16 to 17-year-olds have that time to work, they can get better. They can figure out how to play a certain way. Maybe you get into a system with your EYBL team where that just allows you to impact it more than playing with a high school team where they throw 3 guys at you because you're not playing at a level that has enough good players. They can just throw as many defenders that you want because your high school team sucks, kind of a thing, right? There's different factors that weigh into being able to see how good these guys end up being. Now, you mentioned TJ Power. I think part of the reason he's blowing up is probably because he's going to be 19 years old as a high school senior, right?
Yes.
He's going to be 20 as a freshman. And
I had one coach text me and say TJ Power is older than 2 of the recruits that we have coming on campus this year, and he's playing in Peach Jam. So I just want to put that into context.
That's a big one. That's a big one. Yes.
Now that said,
and they're so reactionary. Like he was a Boston College lean for a long time, and then Duke offered, Carolina offered him, shoo, up 20 spots. But he's the sucker can shoot it, man. Sorry to interrupt, Rob. Go ahead.
No, I do want to ask you guys this, and we need to get into the DJ Wagner, Mackenzie and Baco. Like I want to get into that conversation. But you mentioned something about Cooper Flagg, and the Boozer kid,
Cameron Boozer.
Adam Finkelstein over at 24/7 Sports had a really, really good column, I thought, because to me the most hyped game that came out of there, the thing that I saw the most tweets about, the thing that I saw the most people referencing, the game that had to get moved from a normal gym to the main gym at Peach Jam to be able to accommodate all of the people that wanted to go watch it, was a game between 2 15-year-old teams, right? Between two
they had to do that a lot,
recruits. Yeah, but last time I saw that happen when I was at Peach Jam was when Amani Bates was playing there as a 15-year-old. And I do think that there is a culture when it comes to high school basketball, when it comes to high school basketball prospects, when it comes to the idolization of the next big thing, that we overstate it too much, right? We're like, oh, this kid has the potential to be this great, so we're going to hype him up as the next big thing. Pops up on Instagram, the highlights pop up on TikTok, all of this stuff ends up on YouTube. And it becomes this thing where you are setting up all of these kids for failure, because there is no possible way that you can know that Cameron Boozer or Cooper Flagg could end up being an NBA All-Star when they're 15 years old. You could say that they can end up being a pro, right? That's the reason why Adidas and Nike and all of these sponsorships money and all of these hangers on, you can identify who's going to be a great basketball player when they're 14 or 15 years old, because if you're tall and you can move, you're probably going to end up having a really good shot at playing in the NBA, right? It's much easier to identify the next great basketball player, a potential pro basketball player, when they are in high school than it is to identify.
We proclaimed Amani Bates as the next Kevin Durant. One publication did, and he's going to be spending next season. He's going to be spending next season at Eastern Michigan.
Yeah, well, a lot of people did, and part of what happens is that when you see these guys as 14 and 15 years old, 14 and 15-year-olds, and you say this is what they could be, it's very reasonable. I don't know if you guys saw Amani play when he was 14 or 15. I did a couple times. It was very reasonable to look at a 15-year-old that was already 6'8" and already doing the things that he was doing and already scoring the way that he was scoring with a skinny, small frame, to say, look, that kid is already special. I've never seen a 15-year-old do what he is doing right now. If he continues to grow, he can be this. And that was very true. If he continued to grow, he could have been this. Problem was, he stopped growing. His wingspan never got longer. His body hasn't filled out. He is basically still the same player right now that he was when he was 15 years old. And I want you to think about how good Amani Bates, if he was 15 and he averaged 10 points a game for Memphis, doing all of that stuff that he did, how good do you think we would call that 15-year-old, right? You would think that he was fantastic. You would think that he was the best prospect that you've ever seen as a 15-year-old. He just never improved. And I do think that criticizing the way that we need to change the way that we do this. I'm throwing myself in that mix too. We all need to change the way that we kind of talk about these 15-year-olds, because there's a certain caliber of human being that you should never compare a kid that still doesn't have his driver's license to. You should never be saying Cooper Flagg could end up being. Do not compare him to a Hall of Famer. Do not compare Cameron. You can't even compare Cameron Boozer to his dad right now. That is totally unfair and
because he's bigger than his dad.
Yeah, it's a total.
This kid is huge.
I know, but it's just a totally unreasonable.
But guys, we do this on NBA draft night. We start laughing at the.
Yeah, but that's different. These kids, those guys are about to get paid, and there's a lot riding on those guys. That's different.
Here's another thing I don't think people understand. And T.O., you can attest to this. If you make the NBA, you have succeeded.
You're a winner.
You have succeeded. I don't give a fuck how good you are, right? If you're projected as a top 10 pick and you make the NBA, then
you know what's crazy about that?
You've reached your potential. If you are projected as a top 10 player in the class and you get one NBA contract, then you've done it.
You won.
You've lived up to that.
Here's my thing. He mentioned Josh Jackson in the line of like, I think like didn't pan out. Like, what's the expectation? Because whenever I hear about that's panning out. You've played in the NBA, you're panning out. That like people don't realize how hard it is to make it in the NBA. Like you've panned out. If you're a pro, you've panned out.
There are 500 NBA jobs, 500 of them, right? If you ever get one NBA paycheck, it means at that moment in time, you're one of the 500 best basketball players in the world. Think about how many people play basketball on this planet. Josh Jackson was the number 4 pick. The reason why he flamed out at was he at Phoenix? Where was he? Memphis. The reason he flamed out has everything to do with the shit that he was doing off the court and nothing to do with what happened when you put Josh Jackson on a basketball court, right? Because he was a great player, a great prospect that lived up to that potential, was an All-American when he was at Kansas.
Yes. My point was not that you've made it so you can be compared to whatever you want. You can be talked about however we want to talk about a player. My point is, some of the baseless comparisons on draft night that we have called baseless from you know who, because you know where you can find the linear television draft night coverage from certain people who do not watch any college basketball all season. They're being put in a position to fail.
Moody Mosey.
Yeah, my point is this, guys. The same baseless claims that sometimes come in that coverage, that while they're a little bit out there, look at the viewership, look at the clicks, look at the engagement, is the same reason why we try to sometimes build up 15-year-olds like a Cameron Boozer, like a Cooper Flagg, and draw a comparison on someone. Because if I'm on Twitter and I'm scrolling through things and I'm a casual basketball person, it is late July. My mind, if I'm a casual Twitter person or Instagram, wherever you are, your mind's probably not on or wasn't on Cooper Flagg or Cameron Boozer. But all of a sudden, you see them mentioned in the same breath as a Hall of Fame player in NBA history, and you're saying, well, I'm going to remember this name now because I'm seeing this.
That's irresponsible.
Only to then, when they get to college, let me make this clear. We don't know how good they're going to be. However, Cooper Flagg, Cameron Boozer, the 2025 class that we're building up, I think partially because 2023 and 24 are not particularly great classes. We are talking about those players in a light. They've got great opportunities in front of them. They could be great players. We're not saying that they won't be. I want to make that clear. What we're saying is it is irresponsible to proclaim them as the next generational talent. You know why it's irresponsible? Because the people who are making those claims aren't the people who are inside these players' direct message feeds and inside these players' Twitter feed when they are on the receiving end of comments and feedback because fan X thought this guy was going to be the next Hakeem Olajuwon, and he has a game where he shoots 2 of 11 from the field. And now, because I gambled some money on it, I'm going to get into your feed and tell you that you let me down. Not only did you let me down, you made all these analysts look like clowns. That's where it's irresponsible and wrong. And it's a 15-year-old kid. I didn't know how to scratch my ass at 15, nor alone how to dunk a basketball.
You're 100% right. And the issue is when you...
And he didn't know how to scratch his ass at 15?
Well, I mean, you should have learned how to be able to scratch your ass. But if you didn't... If you didn't know how to wipe your ass by the time that you were 15 years old, that would also be a pretty big problem.
I still don't know how to do that.
That's why you come home and your wife tells you to go get in the shower, right?
Yeah.
No, the last thing that I will say about this, and then we can kind of move on a little bit, is that I understand the desire that to put these kids' names in the same headline with to put, for lack of a better example, Amani Bates and Kevin Durant in the same headline, because you do that, you're going to get clicks on YouTube, you're going to get views on YouTube, you're going to get interactions on Instagram, you're going to have people that are paying attention to you. And when you are trying to grow a brand and grow a channel and grow an Instagram feed and be able to make money off of doing that, you need that interaction. You need that clickbait. I understand that. The problem that you run into is that there's no room.
It's the same clickbait you accused me of with Keegan Murray, and you put the wrong clip up with the whole damn thing. It works. It works.
It works.
Doster, it works.
It works. It works. It works. And there's no room for context when it comes to stuff like that, right? There's no room for being able to contextualize the point that you were trying to make. I can sit here and say that, yeah, look, Cooper Flagg, if this happens, if he develops this, if this continues to come along, if he makes this adjustment, if he adds this kind of a weight, if he does this, that, and the third, he could end up being a great player. There's a real chance that he could be a 5-time NBA All-Star.
He's still a baby,
everything works out for him.
Like, he's still
Problem
a baby.
is, no one hears if everything works out for him, he could be this. What they hear is 5-time NBA All-Star. What they hear is chance to be a Hall of Famer. What they hear is chance to be the next. I don't even know who he's getting compared to, but all you hear is Amani Bates, Kevin Durant, right? You don't hear all of the contextualization. You don't hear that you're saying he needs to add this and develop this and do this and do this, and it's a possibility. There's like a top 5% outcome for his career could end up being this. It's the same people that call Andrew Wiggins a bust, right? Like, look, when Andrew Wiggins was 15, 16, 17 years old, you could look at him and you could say, this kid has a chance to be a top 10 player in the NBA if all of this stuff happens, right? Because he ended up hitting like a bottom 20% out before he just kind of willed his way to a championship with the Warriors. You could say that it was a bottom 20% outcome for him because that didn't develop, this didn't develop, and this didn't develop. Same thing with Amani Bates, right? It wasn't wrong to be able to say that he had a chance to be a superstar when he was 15 years old. What was wrong was people like us, putting people that have a platform, making those comparisons and making those generalizations and putting those headlines out because it sets a level of expectation for the general public that don't understand that what we're saying is that there's like a 10% chance he can be this. There's a 20% chance he could end up being what he is right now. And the likelihood is he's going to be somewhere in the middle where it's just a guy on an NBA roster that starts a bunch of games, makes $100 million, and then poof, he's gone in 10 years. You don't even think about him anymore. That's the problem, is that people don't understand when you make those comparisons, the likelihood of him actually hitting his ceiling is like 5 or 10%. That's just the way it is. And that's what makes LeBron James to me so special, because he had all of this hype. We called him the next Magic Johnson when he was in high school. He was on the cover of Sports Illustrated when he was 16 years old, and he lived all the way up to it. And there are still people that will call him a bust because he's only like the second best player in the history of the NBA at worst.
Nobody's saying that, Ross.
All right. There's 4 other things that I want to get on before we let Fanta talk about his Jon Scheyer and Kyle Neptune comparisons. First and foremost, T.O., best player in the class, Mackenzie Mbako.
Yeah, I mean, he's the safest pick, and there's several others that are very good. But, a lot of people are saying his teammate is the best player in DJ Wagner, and DJ Wagner's a very good going to be a very good player at the next level, but he doesn't have the same type of length and intangibles that, in my opinion, Mackenzie Mbako has. He's a grown man right now. I think that's the big thing. And whenever he stays inside of 3 dribbles, the dude is elite. He's a high-level shooter. He can guard. He's a switchable wing. And how valuable are those guys right now? He's a switchable wing. His ball handling does need some work, but that's being really picky. But he's got the necessary athleticism. He's got good length. He shoots the ball incredibly well. And I'm telling you, the guy is a handful. Now, that all being said, in a good class, he's probably somewhere in that 4 to 12 range, depending on who you talk to in a really good class, because of his length, his ability to shoot the basketball, and his versatility. Outside of that, it's just not, like you've said, Fanta, it's not a great class. Neither is 24, but he's going to be a very good college basketball player for a year. And I think he has a long pro career as well. Now, how that pro career goes, it's really hard to tell, but he has all the things that a lot of NBA teams value: the ability to shoot the ball, the length, and the body type that's going to hold up for a long time.
Yeah, I just don't think that there's anyone in this class. I think that the way that I would phrase it is there's a whole bunch of guys that are top 10 prospects in this class. There's nobody that is a, air quotes here, top 5 prospect, that level of player in this class. I would agree with you on DJ Wagner. 6'2", inefficient scorers that can't really shoot it, can't really create for others, and really needs to just score off the bounce without having that hyper athleticism of someone like a John Morant. How
he is shifty. He is shifty. You got to be able to shoot it now. And if he changed his game to where he was going from high volume score to where, hey, I'm getting into the lane to create, like, he could be an absolute problem. But I don't know that he's not geared like that. But whenever he showed his ability to get into the lane and be intentional about finding somebody else, he was really, really good. And he's a special finisher around the rim. Problem is 6'2". You guys know this. What'd you say the number was, Rob? I think it was you who I was talking to. 3 players in the past 4 drafts smaller than 6'3" or something like that. Like, that's a pretty sizable, number there. It's hard. And I think because he doesn't shoot the ball, I've seen him play in person.
Did you just make up a stat on the spot? You just totally made up that stat.
No.
Yeah.
Were you talking to somebody in your sleep, or?
Yeah.
No, I might have been talking to somebody.
From?
I was talking to somebody.
Me.
I know who he was talking
Look
to.
at the stat. It's like 4 guys within the last 4 years.
No, I know who you were talking to. You were with someone all last week in Georgia, and there can be false narratives coming from him.
No, that's true. Go look it up. How many players 6'2" and under have been drafted in the last 4 years? I think that you can count them on a single hand.
Probably.
That's the big issue right now with DJ Wagner being the number 1 player. That being said, still very good player. It's just, how does he really fit in today's game? I've seen him play 4 times, and in those 4 games, he's 2 of 29 from 3, because I counted, because I was hoping he'd make a couple, so at least he could convince me a little bit, like, hey, maybe it's there. But I'll tell you what, he kept hoisting them, and they kept clanking.
Is it in DJ Wagner's best interest to go to Kentucky? Is it in Kentucky's best interest to take DJ Wagner when they have Robert Dillingham and Reed Shepherd? And, oh, by the way, just picked up Justin Edwards this week. There is only one basketball. And while Wagner is talented, and we've talked about it, you're not going to shy away from someone that talented. By the same token, is this the perfect fit? A fit that has been reported on over the last couple of weeks. The buzz has been increasing. Kentucky's now the favorite to land Wagner. Louisville's still in the race, but Kentucky is the favorite. Is it the best situation? DJ Wagner at Kentucky? I have my doubts based on the Wildcats recruiting class and based on the fact that, Robert, you just said Wagner's not exactly a shot creator for others. Well, they've got others.
Yep. T.O. is a certified Reed Shepherd hater, so I don't know if we can actually have a legitimate conversation.
Not once have I hated on Reed Shepherd. Not one time. Not a single one. I just told him I'd beat him in a shooting contest.
T.O. watched him dunk on Bay Fall and was like, not only is this guy a better shooter than me, he is more athletic than me, and he's going to Kentucky instead of Clemson. No, I can't like this guy. Can't support
First of all,
this.
take it easy. Second of all, to go back to Fanta's
T.O.
point.
saw him play, realized he had no Swedish blood, was like, no,
Done.
I don't Reed Shepherd.
Done. Hey, we don't get Swedish guys too often. Pele Larson, Elliot Cadeau, William Berg at Purdue. I'm not even Swedish. I don't know. I'm just taking the side of my wife. That being said,
big year ahead for Pele Larson. I think he's going to break out even more.
Yeah.
I'm not even Swedish.
I'm not even Swedish. Freaking, I'm Norwegian. We got nobody. We have nobody.
It's the same thing. You have Erling Haaland.
Yeah, might as well be. 3-hour drive.
Do you even know who that is? Erling Haaland?
Who?
Erling Haaland?
Yeah, hold on. The soccer player. Of course.
Yeah, there you go.
Come on, baby.
Who it was.
Come on, man.
Be
better.
Wrap up.
If there's a guy, hey, look, if there's a guy who can make it work with guards that can penetrate and not shoot, it's John Calipari. Like, that's I mean, that his dribble drive stuff, he's throwing a lot of misdirection early in the offense to try to get people in the paint. I think if there is a spot for a non-shooter that loves to get to the paint and can get to the paint without any help, Kentucky's the way to go. And DJ would fit that really well.
What do you think of Dillingham? How much have you seen him play?
Small, like really, really small. Now he is competitive and he's a tough sucker. He can score in bunches, but he's really, really small. That's my only concern. If he's 165 pounds, I'd be surprised. I mean, really narrow shoulders. But I mean, you guys want to talk about quick as a cat? That dude is unbelievably fast with the ball. The problem is he prefers to play off the ball. And that's kind of where I find it interesting, him being 6'1" and playing off the ball at that size.
It's not a good combo.
It's hard.
All right. GG Jackson decommits from North Carolina, commits to South Carolina, reclassifies into the class of 2022. I kind of aired my thoughts on this when it happened. We posted that YouTube video. I'll throw the link in the description below. T.O., I think we kind of disagree on this. I think that this is a bad decision for all involved outside of the financial benefits that GG Jackson is going to get out of this between what he can make from NIL this year as opposed to next year and being able to start his NBA clock and get his second and third NBA contracts a year earlier, which makes him more valuable.
Have you ever turned down $3 million?
No, I never would. And that's why I'm saying, like, that's why if this is strictly a financial thing, do it. I just think that going to a program with a guy that has GG Jackson's specific skill set where you're not really like the guy, you kind of need other people to play off of to kind of set you up. Going to a situation where I can't even name one person on that South Carolina roster without Googling the South Carolina roster. I just think that's a bad fit.
You're not a Michi Johnson fan? Not a huge Hayden Brown guy?
Whatever. And then I think that if you're Lamont Paris, bringing in...
What a win for Lamont. What a win for Lamont.
Is it a win, though? Huge. Is it a win? Yeah, I get the idea.
It's a massive win. If nothing else, they say they stink. And GG averages 15 and 12 and they stink. This allows guys to say yes to South Carolina now. Because South Carolina is not a talent abundant state. It's got 3, 4, maybe 5 a year that can compete at that level. This allows those guys to say yes to South Carolina, despite not being a great school basketball-wise for a long time. Matter of fact, I'm not really sure what South Carolina is good at except for baseball for the longest time running now, and that's a little bit of Clemson hate just kind of bleeding through my pores. But at the same time, like, this is a huge win because you think about Julian Phillips going to Tennessee, PJ Dozier's the last one who went to South Carolina, GG Jackson now, KJ Green next year. There's talent in South Carolina. There's not that much, but what it does is it allows those guys to say yes to Carolina. So for Lamont Paris, this is a huge win. A huge win. Not a little win. A huge win. Now for GG, on the other hand, you're going to
hold on. Before on that, let me play devil's advocate on that for you, because I think that this sets a level of expectation for this program that there is zero chance that is going to be able to be delivered.
It's year one.
Yes, and that's the problem. You're going out
and year one and a rebuild.
You're going out and getting GG Jackson, and it's going to set a level of expectation for what this team should be. And there's no possible way that South Carolina can live up to any kind of expectation. I don't know if they're going to finish top 12 in the SEC this year. I think it's very legitimate that they are right there with like Vanderbilt as ending up being the worst team in the SEC. And
you don't think Stackhouse has got it going?
How did it work out? How did it work out getting Anthony Edwards to Georgia for Tom Crean? How did it work out
for Tom Crean?
How did it work out getting Ben Simmons to LSU for Johnny Jones? How did it work out getting Jaylen Brown and Ivan Rabb to Cal for Konzo Martin? All I'm saying is that when you go out and you get these, how did it work out getting Jaden McDaniels to stay home for Washington for Mike Hopkins? All I'm saying is that when you get these elite recruits to stay home, it helps with the recruiting momentum. It also sets a level of expectation for the program that's surrounding an 18-year-old with a bunch of guys that aren't good enough is a situation that I don't think it's rare to find a situation where that works out to the benefit for everybody involved. Whereas if he had gone to North Carolina this year, maybe next year, whatever it would have ended up being, there would be more talent around him. There would be a better structure for him to be able to thrive. And, you know, at the end of the day, when you're winning games, right, I think that that looks better for you overall as a player, as a prospect heading into the next level, even if you don't necessarily put up the biggest numbers. That's all I'm saying. Your point about it building momentum within the state, 100% legitimate, and I agree with. I also think that there's a very real risk and a downside to bringing him into this situation.
But this is the same exact argument that we talked about earlier in this podcast, which is the theme for this podcast. Recruiting does not necessarily translate to material wins in the sport.
No, but this could lead to getting those 3 and 4 years. Like South Carolina has those 30 to 75 ranked kids. They have those kids on occasion. Like they'll have 2 or 3 every so often. You got to get those kids. And like the fact that they're able to get Gigi helps those kids kind of teeter towards that way. That's my like.
But that's the thing.
And that's fair.
This is where it's
what's
different.
Your expectations?
This is where it's different. This isn't Lamont Paris going, I need to hit it big with this recruit because I'm trying to save my program, or we've got to start winning games. So this is how I'm going to try to parlay it and do it. You don't do it off that way. It's proven to be very unsuccessful for past coaches who have tried to do it. T.O. said it. It's year one. Sure, somebody watching Gigi is going to have this expectation level that he's the next big thing. I'm here to tell you, I don't think so. His skill set doesn't make him someone that others are going to benefit off of. He's a forward. This is not someone who's creating for others. The point being is, yes, there's narratives out there. And Rob, you're absolutely right on what people expect from a kid, a big name. Now they think South Carolina, somebody that's uninformed is going to think South Carolina will play a factor in the SEC. But it's year one. For Lamont Paris's first year on the job at South Carolina is about doing a couple things. Number one, establish some sort of recruiting momentum at a program that needs all the recruiting momentum they can get. Number two, get publicity. South Carolina basketball is not going to get much publicity. And at the end of Frank Martin, I sensed a level of apathy. Lamont Paris just installed energy and buzz into a basketball program at a football school. This is much more of a win than it ever will be a loss.
The only thing I will say is this. You're talking about recruiting momentum. You're talking about recruiting buzz. You're talking about being the cool program to go to. Gigi Jackson was the number 1 prospect in the class of 2023.
And he's reclassing. So I think he's reclassing. That's the reason I didn't put him at number 1. He's reclassing.
He was, before he reclassed, he was number 20. He's number 1 in that class. Right now, according to 24/7's composite recruiting rankings, he's the number 6 player in the class of 2022. Let's say South Carolina has a bad year. Let's say that Gigi Jackson his flaws are exposed this season because there's no point guard on that roster to be able to set him up and put him in a situation where he's going to succeed.
Ohio State transfer Michi Johnson.
Freshmen in the SEC routinely get their ass kicked because that is a great conference, right? That is a legitimately great conference. Fanta, we talked about this a little bit off air, could end up being the best conference in college basketball this season. I think there's a legitimate argument for that. Let's say he averages 11 points, 6 boards, shoots like 32% from 3 as a 6'9" combo forward and drops to like, I don't know, late lottery, middle of the first round.
It takes $30 million.
Are you really building recruiting momentum if the argument is you can bring in this kid that could have been the number 1 player in the class, who you bring him in, you lose a whole bunch of games, he doesn't play that well, and he goes from being the best player in 2023 to being a guy that is picked late lottery? Is that really building recruiting momentum?
Well, what's your alternative? Your alternative
what's the alternative? Being South Carolina and not having anybody drafted for a long time?
I'm just saying, I don't think that this move.
Who's the last one? PJ Dozier?
I think you probably have to do it.
Ever the contrarian you are, Buster.
I don't think you probably have to do it, but I don't think that this is necessarily a move that is the home run that I've seen a lot of people kind of say that it could.
It's year one.
It's year one. It's not like a saving grace. You
got to start somewhere.
Yeah, they're starting well.
They're starting with the number 1 player in the country.
Yeah.
If I could pick, I'm starting there.
And if you go out and you win 4 SEC games with the number 1 player in the country, and he goes from being a projected number 1 pick to being a guy that's taken outside of the lottery, That's all I'm saying. It's not without risk. It's not without risk. All right. The last thing that we wanted to talk about, and I don't know how much time you want to spend on this, Fanta, is Jon Scheyer, Kyle Neptune, and the pressure that new coaches are coming in, are going to face coming in, replacing legends. We just saw Hubert Davis take North Carolina to the national title game, end Coach K's career with back-to-back victories in Cameron Indoor Stadium and in New Orleans at the Final Four, and now is going to be entering this season as in all likelihood, the preseason number one team in the country, now that Pete Nance has been added to the equation. Jon Scheyer, Kyle Neptune are both replacing Hall of Famers, both replacing guys that I think we would all agree are top 5 coaches in the sport before they step down. So you talked to Kyle. What do you have to say?
Well, I'll start with Jon Scheyer. And I want to start by saying that all great eras at some point come to an end. And I do not think it's the worst thing in the world, and have said this before on this podcast, that now is a time of transition for Duke, especially in the current climate of college basketball. I think Jon Scheyer's ready for this. I think he's already crushing it. We've talked about what does it matter. Here's the deal. Recruiting. Here's the deal with Jon Scheyer. Jon Scheyer has made as much of an impression as he can without coaching a game.
Yeah.
Because when you look at who he's got coming in this year with 4 or 5-star recruits, next year, 2023, he had 5. The only reason why he doesn't have 5 now is because Tyrese Proctor reclassified and is suiting up for Duke this season. In terms of recruiting momentum, Duke, you could say it recruits itself, but it speaks for Scheyer that he's gotten out and he has totally cleaned up with the best recruiting class this year, and as it stands right now, the best recruiting class next year. Yeah. Jon Scheyer's ready for this, but this was a transition that was prepared for, that was mapped out. And as much as people talked about Coach K having his long retirement tour that he said wasn't about him, by the same token, Duke had a roadmap. Villanova is very, very different. Okay? There was no predetermined roadmap. Jay Wright got a feeling as this past season went on internally in his mind that this was going to be it for him.
Right.
And then once the season came to a conclusion, he knew at the Final Four that it was going to be his last year, but this was the best kept secret in college basketball. It truly was, because we did not realize that Jay was on the last of all these things. Kyle Neptune had a very good year at Fordham, a Fordham program that greatly needed an injection of energy. Kyle Neptune was always going to have success in year one at Fordham. There's zero expectations at Fordham, and Kyle Neptune's a hard worker. My point is, I go into this thing thinking about the two cases of Mike Krzyzewski will not be in the building, or so he says. We'll see if that ends up being true for Jon Scheyer and for Duke. He doesn't want to be part of this distraction. But there was a roadmap for this transfer of power. At Villanova, guys, after talking with Kyle Neptune, I'll tell you on this podcast, it could not be further from the case of Duke. Jay Wright's around. He's working out with alums. He's meeting alums of the program. He's on campus. He's working with the president at Villanova University. I expect that he'll be around at games and practices. I think that it's not so much about whether or not each of these successors is going to be successful in year one. For the record, I think both will be. I think Cam Whitmore and Mark Armstrong are coming into Villanova. Whitmore in particular, he's going to be a beast. And I think Villanova still has enough with Caleb Daniels and Brandon Slater and that incoming class. Eric Dixon as well is somebody who's only going to get better. I think it's going to be interesting to see how two totally different transfers of power end up playing out. Two fitting candidates for their respective jobs. But Duke, it's always like a foregone conclusion of where they're going to be, right, T.O.? Mm-hmm. Villanova, it's taken time and, frankly, national championships for people to put them in that blue blood column. Can they be able to stay on that same level that Jay Wright had them on? I don't know about that, but I'm really intrigued to see how it plays out.
No, I think obviously haven't talked to Kyle Neptune to the extent that you have, but I did talk to Jon. And one thing that I've noticed about, there were some articles written that there were some other coaches being considered, and people were kind of basing some conclusions of why that is. The reason why it was so that they could continue recruiting at a high level, because Jon was handling most of that stuff anyway. During the July period, Coach K was seldom out on the road. So that was what that had everything to do with. Now, that all being said, is Scheyer going to get the same whistle that K did? I'm interested to see that part. Is Neptune going to get the same whistle that Jay Wright did? I'm interested to see that part and how they proceed. But I think both of them have a very good chance to succeed at two programs that, I mean, they don't recruit themselves, especially in today's day and age. You got to go get them. So you got to be able to do that. But as far as the difference between the two, I think the fact that Jay Wright is going to be around a lot more, I think that's a big thing, because I'm not going to say that's a cloud hanging over anybody's head. But at the same time, his presence, and he has a presence. You guys have both met the guy. You've talked to him on several occasions. Like, Jay Wright has an aura around him. And if he's going to be at all those games, it's going to be there. So I'm interested to see how that proceeds. I actually don't think Coach K will go to the games. I really don't. He said, "Where am I going to sit?" That's a, I know they'd probably pull up a throne beside the court if he wanted.
If he goes to games, it'll be like the neutral site ones where there's more space, where you can kind of walk in through the specific entrances at like Madison Square Garden or in some of these NBA arenas that are built for that. Cameron Indoor Stadium isn't built for having like VIPs sitting courtside, right? Are you going to put Coach K in the middle of the Cameron Crazies? No, it's not going to work. No. Tell me if you think this is a hot take. I think there is significantly more pressure on Jon Scheyer this season than there will be on Kyle Neptune and may ever be on Kyle Neptune for two specific reasons. One, what Hubert Davis did and the nature of that Duke-UNC rivalry. And two, the fact that 3 of the top 4 prospects in the class of 2022 are currently on Duke's campus, right? So there's talent coming in. There's a level of expectation. And Hubert Davis just ended Coach K's career and made it to the national title game in his first year, replacing Roy Williams.
Thank God that Duke has an elite point guard to kind of shuttle everybody together. A good veteran point guard.
They got a good
with
veteran
excellent
point guard.
quickness.
They got a good veteran point guard.
That's a great call.
I think your take's right. You know why?
No, but hold on. Before I finish that, I think that the job is going to be much more difficult to replace Jay Wright for Kyle than it's going to be for Jon to replace Coach K. And the reason that I say that is so much of what so much of the reason why Villanova has been a national title team the last few years has been, one, the player development and the culture of continuity on that roster is a way that I like to phrase it. And two, the fact that they are so good at not running anything, right? I don't think that there's a team in college basketball that has fewer scripted plays than Villanova. It's all concepts. It's all conceptual. It's all, we're going to beat the first man. We're going to get a paint touch. We're going to kick it out. We're going to create a closeout situation. If we don't have a jump shot there, we're going to do the same thing over and over and over again. It starts with ball screens, and you get to that point where it's just drive, kick, drive, kick, drive, kick, drive, kick, drive, kick. Sometimes you're going to start out with that first paint touch, posting up a point guard. It's all conceptual, right? It's all about drilling these ideas and these concepts.
Kentucky might run less.
No, they run a lot of scripted stuff. When it's the dribble drive motion, a lot of it is just kind of they're out there playing. But they do run a lot of scripted stuff where it's like, all right, we're gonna run this guy off of a baseline stagger. We're gonna run this guy off a curl over here. And I don't know how well Kyle's going to be able to replicate that, right? I don't know how much of that was just the culture and the program and everybody teaching themselves and the level of expectation and recruiting guys that know how to, air quotes here, play the right way, and how much of that was Jay Wright instilling that in everybody. I don't know how much of that was a coaching staff. I talked to Kyle 2 weeks ago, and he basically said, like, look, this summer has been really no different because Jay is normally off coaching USA basketball anyways. It's all the assistants that do everything during the summer with the players coming back. So it's like it's kind of been a throwback to what it was when he was still on staff at Villanova. It's felt kind of normal. He said it's going to feel the most abnormal when you get into practices and you get into games and Jay Wright is not there. So that's a pretty wild
statement that it's going to be easier for Jon Scheyer to replace our generation's Wooden than it is for Kyle Net. Like that's that's a hefty statement. Now both of them are filling huge shoes, but like,
yeah. So maybe long term, I do think your take, where I agree with your take, is on the upcoming season.
Yeah.
Of who's got more pressure on them because of the way the thing ended for Duke. Too. And I would argue that in the Big East this upcoming year, I could probably pick 5 coaches with more pressure on them before I'd even get to Kyle Neptune.
Like there's going to be no pressure. They lost.
There's
all
no
of their
pressure.
Veterans,
there's no pressure. There's no expectation for them to win the Big East this year. You know why? Everybody and their mother is on Creighton, and the trendy pick after Creighton ain't Villanova. The trendy pick after Creighton is Xavier. So there's not pressure. Like, I don't think that I think there's obviously an expectation level that they are a factor, and I still think they'll be a top 3 team in the Big East. I still think they'll be an NCAA tournament team. I don't know about this team, and I think what's very interesting about this year's Villanova is they, under Jay Wright, it took time for him to trust freshmen. Jordan Longino, it took a full year for him to build a trust factor. He was a top-tier prospect. This Villanova team, to me, doesn't have enough in their experience department to not trust the ceilings of Cam Whitmore and Mark Armstrong. They need their freshmen to come in and deliver. And Whitmore has so much buzz around him. Villanova's not known for the one and done, but if Whitmore pans out to what he could be that. That, to me, is a very interesting layer to Villanova going into this year because they've been known to breed the 3- and 4-year players that they develop the hell out of. They don't have enough of those guys with Gillespie and Samuels gone to just rely on them. They're going to need these freshmen to step in and contribute, but there's no question about it. Duke is expected to win national championships. When I said on the podcast a month ago that I don't see Duke as a national championship caliber team, Duke fans were not pleased. You know why? They fully expect to be in that conversation. And I don't know if this team is at that level. I think they're a top 10 team. I don't know if they're one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the country. We'll see if that pans out. That's why there's pressure on Jon Scheyer. Because regardless, as much as it's not Coach K, the expectation still is we better win and we better beat North Carolina this year.
Yeah. The last, I'll just put a bow on it like this. I view Villanova and Duke over the course of like the last, decade, since 2013, since whenever Jay kind of turned this thing back around. I view North Carolina or Duke and Villanova as both right there as top 5 programs in America. I think that keeping Duke as a top 5 program in America, if you're Jon Scheyer, will be easier than keeping Villanova as a top 5 program in America if you're Kyle Neptune. And that's why I said that the job that Kyle is going to have replacing him is going to be a harder thing to do. That's
I wasn't necessarily disagreeing with you. I was just saying that.
No, I know.
I
just wanted to make that point before
I agree with you.
Before I got yelled at by Villanova fans on Twitter. Anyway, listen, we've been here for an hour and 15 minutes, guys.
I thought this was a long, right?
Episode. I think I might break this up into a 2-part episode and see what we can do with that. But listen, it's been a pleasure. It always is a pleasure. Fant is going on vacation later on this week. T.O. probably isn't going to leave the country ever again after spending a month and a half in Sweden and completely ruining his sleep cycle and his children's sleep cycle. Fanta is, are you going fishing, Fanta? Where are you going?
I'm heading to Maine and I'm going lobster hunting.
Haha, yes.
There you go.
There's nothing better than a good lobster roll from Maine. But listen, this has been fun. It's always great catching up with you guys. We will see you again, maybe next week, probably more likely the week after. So until then, rate, review, subscribe, like, comment, do all of those good things. And we will see you guys in a couple of weeks.